Good afternoon. This is Bob Graham from the Graham Center for Public Service at the University of Florida. I'm very appreciative of your participation this afternoon. We're open to any questions that you would like to ask. This was in large part prompted by some interest by the media in the fact that Florida, after having made a surge of return of civics to the school curriculum, last year, between the legislature and a gubernatorial veto, all the money that was available to support civic education, such as in teacher training, development of specialized materials, having an online service for students, all that was vetoed or not funded. As a result of a generous grant from the Carnegie Corporation, we've been able to limp along this year. But it's going to take the state stepping forward and accepting its responsibility if civics is going to be as strong an element in the curriculum as I think it must be to maintain our democracy. I hope that one of the things that we'll be able to talk about during this session is what can you as a citizen do to help assure that the next generation of voting citizens in Florida are well prepared to be effective advocating and activist citizens. So thank you very much. Let's go on to the questions.
Okay. Governor, how do you foresee the Graham Center contributing to the overall civic health of Florida?
The Graham Center and its collaborative organizations, such as the Joint Center on Citizenship between the Graham Center and the Lou Fry Center at the University of Central Florida, we're contributing by taking civics to the state. In the instance of the Joint Center, we were very much involved in 2009 in the passage of the Sandra Day O'Connor Act, which called for the return of civics after almost 40 years absence into the curriculum of Florida schools, and now have provided support to that return in teacher preparation and instructional materials. That's a way in which we're carrying out our first mission, which is to increase the level of civic activism across Florida. Second, we also are very interested in developing the next generation of civic and public leadership in Florida. And we have about a dozen different programs here on campus, such as one that took place just last weekend, what we call the Florida Futures Summit. Over 100 college and university students from around the state came to the university for the weekend. They participated in a series of panels with experts on particularly issues relating to the environment, sustainability, water issues, agriculture, ecotourism. And then they wrote policy proposals as to what they thought could be done to advance those different topics. And in the past, we've had considerable success getting the policy proposals actually enacted into law. As an example, 3 years ago, the topic was voting, and one of the proposals was to recommend that Florida go to online voter registration so that you didn't have to go to the courthouse if, for instance, you moved from a dormitory to an apartment, or in any other citizen had changed their residence and therefore needed to change their voting registration. The recommendation to do that online was accepted by a number of legislators, introduced, advocated for, and passed, and as of January 1st of this year, you have the opportunity to do all the things that relate to your voter registration sitting at your home and at your computer. That's the kind of preparation of our young people to be in positions of civic and public leadership. That is the second major objective of the Graham Center at the University of Florida.
All right, Governor. Now this goes to students' interest in preparing for an eventual public service career. So after graduating from law school, how did you prepare yourself to run for the State House? And what did you find was the best way to connect to the people you wanted to represent?
I'm going to answer both what I did and also what I think is the best track. Part of that track is getting a good education, and I would personally be biased towards a liberal arts education, because once you're in public office, you're going to be faced with issues that require a technical background, to those that require some knowledge of history, to those that are more sociological. So the broader your educational background, the better prepared you'll be for whatever specific policy issues you have to be engaged with. Second, I recommend that before you commit yourself to public service, be sure that you have an alternative. To the most ineffective people that I dealt with in my 38 years in public office tended to be the people who had to keep the job. That is, they had never done anything else that had given them the economic and, even more important, the psychological independence to be able to be risk takers. They wanted to be sure they voted in a way that would have the least likelihood of affecting their ability to get reelected to the job. That is not an acceptable psychological position for a person in public office. You've got to be prepared to vote the way you think is in the public interest, even when it puts you at some political risk. And one of the best ways to avoid being put into that position of submissiveness is to know that there's something else out there that you can do that will support your family at whatever lifestyle you have established, and will give you the psychic rewards, the sense of satisfaction of achievement that public service provides. So that's an important next step. As you get into your position, pick out an area that you are really passionate about and prepared to spend a lot of time becoming the most expert person within the group that you're serving. You know more about higher education policy than anybody else in the state legislature. You can quickly become the dominant figure in that area in which you've invested that time and effort. And once you've established yourself in one position, then it's easier for you to say, all right, having done that, I'm now very interested in healthcare policy, and I'm going to move on to that. The fact that you've been so successful in your first effort at concentrated attention gives greater credibility to your likelihood of success in your second, your third, and your fourth. So those are some of the early steps that I would recommend for a person who is considering offering themselves for either civic leadership in an organization such as a League of Women Voters or a Chamber of Commerce, whatever it might be, or in an elective position.
Okay. There's been a lot of coverage about the negative impacts of social media on democracy. In your view, what are some of the more positive ways that we can leverage social media in today's political system?
Well, the same thing has been said about every advance in communication technology. When the Gutenberg printing press was developed over 500 years ago, people thought that it was going to be the death knell to society, because all of a sudden, instead of a small group of aristocrats running the affairs, suddenly the whole population was going to have access to information, and that would inevitably lead to their wanting to play a role. Our United States of America was one of the first countries in the world to be based on the concepts that the Gutenberg press allowed, which were democracy, that the government was of, by, and for the people, not just a small elite. So I use that example to say that this is not a transformational experience we're going through. It's just a different technology. And I think it has great promise to expand the level of civic activism among our citizens, which in my judgment is one of the keys to a strong democracy. Now people will be able to organize more quickly and effectively by using social media. People will be able to make information known quickly and broadly. Social media has been a significant part of almost every major social movement of the last 15 to 20 years, both in the United States and around the world. And in my opinion, will continue to grow in its influence in shaping the battleground for civic participation.
This one goes to political divisions. How do you see us overcoming the partisan anger that is preventing collaboration in our public policy?
There's no silver bullet to that very difficult issue, but I think certainly one of the places it starts is in our schools. I think a reason that we are as tribal as we are today, and there are so many divisions, is because we've had two generations of Americans who never had any formal exposure to principles like tolerance and compromise and how a democracy works to come to decisions that hopefully serve the broad public interest. And with that absence of basic understanding is substituted suspicion and prejudice and questioning the motivations of people who don't believe exactly as you do. So I think returning an understanding of what it means to be a citizen in a democracy to the classroom is a critical part of reversing the situation today. For those of us who have completed our formal education, I think it's civic involvement. If you actually are out in your neighborhood dealing with a local problem, you're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to learn a lot about your neighbors. Why do they share your feeling that this is a problem that needs to be solved? What skills do they bring to achieving a solution? You're also going to be learning a lot about your local government. You'll run into some highly competent people, and you'll run into some people who are not very competent. That's just the nature of human beings, and that's the nature of government. Government is a very human institution with all of its strengths and its weaknesses, and those aren't matters of moral integrity or lack of integrity. They're just the way we humans are constituted. So I think for the beyond the classroom Americans, the key is involvement. Be sensitive to an issue in your community, whether it's you don't think that the service that you're getting in public transportation is adequate, or you feel that the public health department doesn't have enough facilities in your neighborhood to deal with things like the current flu epidemic, and then take it on as your responsibility to get that problem solved. You'll be a better citizen, and you will contribute to overcoming this sense of gridlock and partisan division that is so much a part of our current politics.
Okay, we have a question that has come in on the upcoming amendment for rights restorations and former felons. What are your views on this issue, and what can citizens do to campaign for an amendment and support it?
Yeah, I strongly support the constitutional amendment, although frankly I'm disappointed that we've had to go to a constitutional amendment. For most of the modern history of Florida, and I can speak particularly for the last 40 or so years of the 20th century, Florida had a system dealing with felons who had completed their sentence, completed whatever post-sentence supervision they were required to accept, and have lived a clean life. They got their rights restored. It was almost automatic. And it was a very important thing, not only because it allowed them to become again a part of the voting population of the state, but so many jobs in Florida are denied to you if you are a felon whose rights have not been restored. For instance, you can't be a barber in Florida if you, no matter how competent you may be, if you had been convicted of a felony and not had your rights restored. So it was a significant economic as well as political burden. I'm disappointed that that the policies of the middle and latter part of the 20th century were not continued into the 21st, but that's the way the political system moved, and I think now the people are saying that they want to put it in the Constitution so that it doesn't depend upon who happens to be the governor at any given time, that it is a constitutionally protected right of all Floridians who happen to fall into this category of a felon who in a non-life-threatening offense who is now going to be assured that if they conduct themselves properly, they'll get their rights restored in an effective process rather than the one we have today, which is for all in practical purposes, no restoration of rights.
Okay, a question's coming in now about what can history tell us about politics and civics? And that's kind of a two-part question. Were there any former governors or senators in the past who you have modeled your tenure after?
Yes, I was very fortunate to follow some of the very best governors in Florida's history, in my opinion. One of those being Reuben Askew, my immediate predecessor. Governor Askew was a very in tune with modern Florida governor in areas like education and environmental protection and the openness of our government, its transparency to citizens. He was a great, effective leader and allowed me, when I succeeded him, to start my governorship from a very advanced position. Before Governor Askew, a governor that I greatly admired and who was influential on me was Leroy Collins. Governor Collins was governor during the difficult years after desegregation, and when many southern states were shutting down the schools and other forms of rebellion against desegregation, Governor Collins was courageously leading Florida towards making this change with as little disruption and particularly as little violence as possible. And Florida is a different state today because of that leadership that he provided. He was a great role model.
Okay, and what advice do you have on changing the culture of civic engagement, particularly among college-age students?
I think the culture of civic engagement today is one of non-engagement. The U.S. Census Bureau every 4 years takes a survey of American attitudes on a range of areas that you might call the civics roster of action. And what it has shown is that in most areas, such as, are you voting? Do you belong to an organization that is focused on doing civic good, such as the League of Women Voters or the Rotary Club? Have you engaged with your neighbors in the last year to try to solve a local community problem? That those numbers are all going in the wrong direction, and that Florida tends to be in the lower quartile of America in terms of states on those indicators. So I think it's very important that we begin to restore a sense of civic activism to our culture. I think a key to that is to give people the skills to be effective citizens. Knowing what to do to solve a civic problem is sort of like knowing how to play the piano. You're not born with that skill. You have to learn it, and particularly you have to practice it. You can't learn civics by reading a textbook any more than you can learn to play basketball by hearing a lecture on basketball. They inherently require active involvement as part of the learning process. So I believe that a key to restoring civic culture is to provide people with an opportunity to learn the skills of effective citizenship, encourage them to see opportunities to apply those skills to make their own communities a better place, and the importance of persistence, that you're going to, when you start down that road of improvement, you're going to run into some barriers. You're going to probably suffer some defeats, and you've got to be prepared to pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and keep on going. I think the three essential requirements of effective citizenship are persistence, passion, you have to care deeply about accomplishing your objective, and the skills that will be the means by which you'll accomplish your objective.
Okay, how can a person advocate for the preservation of our natural environment?
There are many opportunities for you to be an effective advocate for the natural environment, but before you do that, you need to go through a learning process so that you are advocating based on facts and not just on emotion. Once you've invested the time to become knowledgeable, let's say the thing that you live in Northeast Florida and you're very concerned about the state of the St. Johns River. First thing I'd do is join an organization like the St. Johns River Keeper and become educated as to the river and what are its challenges and what are the steps that could be taken in order to mitigate those challenges. Then learning the skills of effective citizenship, which include skills such as understanding who the decision maker is. If you're particularly concerned that, let's say, you think there are too many polluting chemicals going into the St. Johns River, who's responsible in Florida for dealing with chemical pollution of a navigable water body? Once you've learned who that person is, and frankly it's a combination of the St. Johns River Water Management District and the State Department of Environmental Protection, then learn who are the people in those agencies who make the decision, what would be their hot button, what would cause them to be most responsive to your argument that steps should be taken to reduce the amount of chemical pollution of the St. Johns River, and then when are the opportunities for either face-to-face or through social media or through writing an op-ed in a local newspaper, or all the other ways that you can communicate with that decision maker to both get their attention and get their willingness to accept your ideas as to what is the problem and what is the solution to the problem.
Okay, we have a comment from Terry Spencer, who wants to thank you for your lifetime of leadership.
Thank you, Terry.
And now the next question, and we have about 5 minutes here, so if you have any last minute questions, Facebook, chime in. But what was the best piece of advice you received during your career in politics?
Well, some of it is what I said earlier on, and that was this idea of don't jump into politics right out of school. Be sure you've got something else in your life that you can do that will support you and give you the psychic rewards that politics provides. Another good piece of advice is that if you're fortunate enough to have a spouse, that this is not an individual decision you're making. Be sure that he or she shares your enthusiasm and will be a partner with you, and look for opportunities to make that partnership as fulsome as possible. Those would be a couple of pieces of advice for a happy and successful life in civic and public leadership.
Okay. Does local government offer more opportunities for effective citizenship?
Yes, and one of the things that concerns me is that as media declines, as there are fewer newspapers, and as the newspapers which are left have fewer reporters that cover the school board or the city council meeting, people are made less aware of opportunities for civic involvement in those local government agencies. If, for instance, the school needs to have more volunteers in a particular area in order to enrich the curriculum, but you don't know about it because there isn't a local newspaper that's writing about school issues, or the local television station doesn't provide much coverage of that level of government, then you probably are ignorant that there is a need for those volunteers, and if you're prepared and willing to provide that service, you don't do it. So one of the challenges is to stay to the best of your ability informed, and that's a place in which social media is filling some of those voids. Many communities have active bloggers who are communicating to their readers things that are happening locally that you don't see, hear, or see about in the more traditional media. So stay attuned, and when something that you see concerns you and you think you've got something to contribute to solving a problem or taking advantage of an opportunity, step forward.
Okay, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Are there any last minute comments you'd like to make to our viewers before we sign off for the afternoon?
Well, thank you very much. One thing I'm concerned about, and this is going to be in the nature of some lobbying, is that, as I said, civics education has come back into the schools in Florida, and we should be very proud of it. As an example, there is a national survey. It's called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, acronymed into NAEP. Every 4 years, NAEP assesses the civic knowledge of American students, primarily at the 8th grade level. They give a test which is built around what are the competencies of citizenship. The last time this test was administered, which was 3 years ago, less than 1 out of 3 8th grade students could pass the test on what are the essential competencies of effective citizenship. Last year, Florida's 7th graders were administered approximately the same test, a test of proficiencies of citizenship, and 70% of our students were able to successfully pass the exam. I think that was very much the fact that our students were beginning to have a good educational background in civics, with teachers who were well prepared and instructional materials that was appropriate to their age levels. You can make a real difference with quality education. Now, that whole program has been largely supported by the Joint Center for Citizenship, located at the University of Central Florida and here at the University of Florida. The legislature last year zeroed that out. They're on the verge of doing the same thing again this year. If you think civics education in schools is important, when you turn off this Facebook program, turn on your email, get the address of your member of the state Senate or state House of Representatives and send them an email and urge them to give full support to the civic education items in the budget that they will soon be voting upon. If there isn't an outcry from the public, I'm afraid we're going to have another year like this one where we had to go begging to get the scraps to hold a very important program for the future of Florida and America together. So citizens, we need your help. Turn this program off. Get your email address of your legislator. Tell him or her that you want them to support quality civic education in Florida and that you're going to be checking on their voting record. That could be your contribution to a better America today.